If you had half the thyroid removed for a nodule, is it necessary to take thyroid for the rest of your life? Told necessary to suppress the thyroid. Well, if you had half your thyroid removed, Dee, there are a number of reasons, and I'm not sure because you didn't give me enough detail, but some people get half their thyroid removed because of a goiter or because of a cancer, some because they have hyperthyroid, and so they opted to have half their thyroid removed. It depends on why it was removed, but is it necessary to take it the rest of your life? I've seen it go both ways. I've actually seen people not need to take the thyroid medication even with just half a thyroid if they got their diet and their lifestyle dialed in. It's kind of like, well, kind of like a kidney. If you have a kidney removed, the other kidney gets a little bit bigger and takes on the work of two kidneys, then your body adapts and moves on. And so kind of I've seen the same thing with the thyroid, but it just depends on why you had half of it removed. Let's see. Cystic fibrosis and iodine. James wants to know my thoughts on cystic fibrosis and iodine. My thoughts on any nutrient, doesn't matter what disease we're talking about, including cystic fibrosis, is test, don't guess. I mean, I could boil it down to that and probably be the simplest way to say it, because I've seen cases of cystic fibrosis. I've seen cases of cardiovascular disease. I've seen cases of hypothyroidism. I've seen cases of multiple forms of autoimmune disease. And if I were just to generically give everybody the same thing, I could be way off the mark for most of them. But testing affords and allows us to get very, very specific about whether or not a person needs that and whether or not that's going to help that person's overall recovery and function. Julie says, please elaborate on cause of thyroid nodules. I'm in the watch and see mode. Well, I mean, look, the biggest cause of thyroid nodules historically is iodine deficiency, Julie. So have your doctor do an iodine loading test. As far as other causes, gluten is a major cause. If you haven't read No Grain, No Pain, pick up a copy of No Grain, No Pain and get to reading and get to applying phase 1 and phase 2 of the diet, because that's probably arguably the largest cause of what we see in epidemic hypothyroid problems nowadays. Other things can cause it as well. There certainly are a number of chemicals. We mentioned the halides earlier, but even things like rocket propellants and jet fuels and things of that nature. So if you live near an airport, or if you're in a house that's, a mile away from the airport and you've got all that jet stream fuel just dumping down in your house all the time, like that's one of those areas where you might have, some serious water and air filtration that you want to implement or even potentially move. Burgle says, hi from my mom's basement. Welcome, Burgle. Rosemary, can a lack of iodine cause a miscarriage? Fetus never developed, a miscarried at 2 months. I was undiagnosed hypo at the time and previously had 2 children 2 years before. Yes, it can. As a matter of fact, I love that question, Rosemary. One of the cases that came in to see me is a woman who had such severe levels of fluoride toxicity. Her level when we actually got her water testing back, it was severe. She actually had a blue ring around her bathtub. There was so much fluoride in her drinking water, and it was actually causing her to have an infertility issue. Until when we figured that out, we actually pushed that fluoride toxicity out of her using more iodine. That's one of the ways to detoxify from halide toxicity, is to use iodine as kind of an antidote, so to speak. There's actually, when they study, if you guys recall the Chernobyl incident in Russia, where the nuclear power plant basically was breached, it was the widespread use of iodine that inhibited the radioactivity levels to create the children of that generation. A lot of times where you see radioactive spills and things, is the children end up with a lot of cancer. Well, in this case, iodine was used, and so we think that's the reason why it prevented the vast increase in cancers from children born of the parents that were exposed at Chernobyl. Let's see here. What are the defining symptoms of iodine deficiency? My doctor says I can't be deficient. It only happens in third. Your doctor's, well, I'm just going to be frank. Your doctor's a moron. If he says that you can't be iodine deficient and it's only going to happen in third world countries, then he's not a very intelligent doctor, and you might need to go find a new one. And I don't really like to talk bad about other people, but that's just ignorance talking, and I don't like that. I don't like it when people are told such nonsense. Get tested. The defining symptoms of iodine deficiency can be many different things, as we said already. You might just have hypothyroidism, and if you already know you have that and you haven't been tested, it's the very first thing you need to ask for. And says, I have nodules and I'm hyperthyroid. I have learned to keep away from excess iodine. Is that correct? Yes and no, because there is actually some research, and I've seen this be the case, where hyperthyroid can actually be caused by iodine deficiency too. But as a general rule of thumb, yes, you don't want to take high doses of iodine if you're hyperthyroid, but you do want to have a number of other things checked. One of the biggest correlations with hyperthyroid Graves' disease is gluten sensitivity. Just like gluten can cause Hashimoto's, gluten can also cause Graves, among other things, other chemicals. Graves is in my experience, is really, I see a lot of people with Graves' disease who have a lot of chemical reactivity. And when we start addressing that chemical reactivity, we see improvements. How does this affect, Diana wants to know, how does this affect people who have had their thyroid removed, a total thyroidectomy? Well, if you've had your total thyroid removed and there's no residual tissue left and there's no functioning thyroid left whatsoever, then you're probably just going to be good to go with your thyroid medication. It's not the best solution, but you can't undo the surgery once it's happened. And that's just the nature of the beast. So you can't relive the past. You can't stay in the past. You just got to move on. But if you've had a total thyroidectomy, you're probably going to be on that medication, for the rest of your life. Let's see here. Dr. Osborne, can you do some vids about Lyme virus mold remedies and healthy ways to gain weight when battling? Yeah, I can. We'll come back and do that in 2020. Okay. What about being hyper and steering clear of iodine because it stimulates excess thyroid hormone? Again, iodine doesn't stimulate excessive thyroid hormone. How do we know this? We know this from the Japanese cultures who consume in their diets through seaweed and seafood on the order of magnitude of 50 to 80 milligrams of iodine a day without an increased incidence of hyperthyroid. So again, I think it's just my experience and my opinion that whole hyperthyroid and iodine connection has been overblown and overbloated. And I just don't see that pan out. That being said, it's never a good idea to just megadose any nutrient without adequate guidance. Let's see here. My doctor won't test me for iodine deficiency. I already asked him. Well, find a new doctor, Wanda. If your doctor's not willing to be objective and he just wants to spout rhetoric that doesn't have any scientific or objective basis, it's probably time to move on. That sounds to me like not a very good doctor. Let's see. No functioning doctor, and T4 was fine, so they don't test T3, so I started taking 12 milligrams of iodine 2 months ago. Yeah, you could do that. So they should be testing TSH, T3, T4, reverse T3, free T3, and free T4 as a baseline for thyroid hormone testing. Then you should also ask them to test the full spectrum of nutrients related to thyroid formation or thyroid hormone formation. And we did a number of months ago an entire video on the intrinsic detailed nature of the nutrients required to make thyroid, but also to activate and to connect thyroid to your DNA. So if you aren't familiar with that, there's about 17 different nutrients that are required for your thyroid to properly be produced and to be activated. Dwayne says, I take kelp tablets for my iodine. Is that sufficient? It might be, Dwayne. It depends on the level of iodine in those kelp tablets and the size of tablets that you're taking. Let's see. You wants to know, could iodine deficiency be the cause of legs, foot, and hand cramps? Yes, it can, but that's generally leg, foot, and hand cramps are generally excessive caffeine, too much too much diuretic medication. So if you're on like a blood pressure medication that's a diuretic, that can do that. And then not enough calcium, magnesium, potassium, or electrolyte imbalance. Those are kind of more common to see cramping like that. Let's see, Shireen, I'm hypertensive. I use sea salt. Am I not using the right salt? It's not an issue of whether or not you're using the wrong or right salt. It's an issue, Shireen, of whether or not you're getting enough iodine in the diet that you eat. So again, don't rely on sea salt as the only source of iodine in your diet. You should really be relying heavily on the seafood. If you don't like seafood, you should be looking at supplementing your diet with some type of really quality multivitamin, again, that contains iodine. I have an iodine preparation, but the dose starts at 12.5 milligrams. So, you know, if we're looking at, again here, 12.1 pill is 12.5 milligrams. I have something called ultra iodine, but I also have something called ultra nutrients, and ultra nutrients contains your daily need for iodine, not in a mega dose, but in a regular kind of closer to this range here, and just making sure you're getting adequate quantities. Let's see. Elizabeth says, I understand bromine replaced iodine in breads. It did. So brominated wheat flour is one of the things that, you know, bromine is added as a dough conditioner. And so it's, you'll see that a lot. If you know, again, if you're eating wheat and you're watching me, you may want to go back and read No Grain, No Pain, and you'll change your mind on that wheat. But brominated wheat, definitely a source of bromine. Let's see. Recently read that the West Coast is being fried by the nuclear radiation from Fukushima. Should we increase iodine to protect? And two, should seafood be eaten? This is a really good question, Elizabeth, and I don't think anybody can truly fully answer it and know for certain. I would say yes, it wouldn't be a bad idea to protect yourself with a little bit higher levels of iodine, somewhere in this neighborhood, more of this kind of counter-effective dose of 12.5 a day if you are, you know, in that area. But there have been some studies that show that the nuclear fallout, so to speak, in the ocean water is greater in your area, but even worse around Japan. Let's see, what causes thyroid nodules and what to do after diagnosis? Again, a lot of things cause thyroid nodules. Gluten can cause them. Chemical reactions can cause them. Nutritional deficiency, including iodine deficiency, can cause them. Selenium deficiency can cause thyroid nodules. So a number of different things. Again, the key, many of you have gone to your doctor and you've been told you have thyroid nodules or hypothyroidism. And so then you've been put on a medication. And what you've been told is what I've heard, you know, client after client come in and see me say, which is, my doctor said I had hypothyroidism and I needed to take this medicine for the rest of my life. But the only test that he ran was TSH, right? Which is like, it's a good test, but it shouldn't be the test that says you need to be on a medication for the rest of your life. So again, you want to get with a doctor who's going to test multiple avenues of how your thyroid works, the nutrients related with your thyroid, the chemical associations with nodular goiter formation. So again, having all of those things looked at is very important if you're going to find out why. Don't just blindly take a medication because your doctor told you that you needed to for the rest of your life. It doesn't make any sense. You know, deal with it by asking intelligent questions and hopefully getting a doctor who's going to spend a little bit more time with you and be a little bit more investigative. Let's see here. Dealing with stress and noticing what triggers my stress, be it people or places, I steer clear of being hyperthyroid. I don't need extra stress. Okay, no question on that. Love it. Ann says iodine makes a huge difference to how she feels. Hair test shows iodine level. No, hair test not a great indicator of iodine, Shasha. So I wouldn't use that as the indicator for whether or not you're adequately getting iodine. Did I ever hear of someone being allergic to bovine thyroid supplement? I developed acne 5 days after starting it, but my doctor doesn't believe it's related. It might be. It's possible. I mean, I get people that react to bovine glandular stuff, you know, it's not super, super common, but it does happen. And if you know, the best key there, Lori, would be to stop it for a couple of weeks if the acne goes away, and then start it again. And if the acne comes back, you'll kind of have an answer, like a more clear-cut answer. Let's see. Have you ever heard of someone losing their ability to feel hunger and thirst? My thyroid tests are fine. However, my paradoxus and my, I think you mean your peroxidase antibodies are consistently high. Any tests I could recommend? Yes, people can lose their ability to feel hunger and thirst, and there are a number of different conditions that can affect that. My advice to you, really, I mean, that's kind of a challenging question in this format, is get with a really solid functional doc to get that one figured out. If you're using chloramine and not chloramine, what you can use to filter it out, the best thing to use is reverse osmosis. If you go check out Gluten Free Society, we have a shop there, and then we have some lifestyle recommendations on a reverse osmosis product that works fantastically well. Let's see. Dolores wants to know about the cyanide in apricot seeds. I would assume you're taking apricot seeds for a cancer issue, but can the cyanide in that potentially inhibit thyroid function? And the answer is yes, potentially it could. So you kind of got to weigh the balance of that. Let's see. Carol says, I've heard so much that iodine is bad for Hashimoto's, and I've been avoiding for years, never resolved Hashi, even with your diet and fasting. I have been consuming a full nori sheet once a week for the past few months, and I feel the same, although not completed antibody labs. What are your thoughts on iodine for Hashi? I'm fine with iodine for Hashi. You just need to get a full workup, Carol. If you're following No Grain, No Pain, and you didn't put your antibodies to sleep or to bed, it's because you're missing something else. Remember, there's 4 primary triggers for antibodies to the thyroid. There's chemical triggers, food triggers, nutritional deficiency triggers, and microbial triggers. Microbial meaning bacteria, yeast, parasitic, etc. So if you haven't had all those things looked at, you're probably missing one of those other 4 triggers, or multiple triggers, not just gluten or grain. Let's see, Betty, is iodized salt healthy, or is it better to get iodine from other sources? My opinion, it's better to get it from other sources, but if you had no other option, iodized salt would be, again, we got to get iodine in the diet. So generally I'd say get it from other sources, but if you were, if you had no other option, you could use iodized salt. It's just, there are better options. Let's see here. Keep going. Yeah, if your doc refuses to check for anything other than TSH, again, they're working in antiquated dark ages of endocrinology. If that's the case, it's time to move in with you might want to consider a different doctor if that's all they're testing. Yeah, so Linda says, iodine was never even brought up in the conversation when I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism 10 years ago. Yeah, it is infuriating. That's why I'm doing this show, because how many people suffer with hypothyroidism? I mean, it's the #1 prescription medication written in the United States today is for thyroid medicine, or if it's not #1, it kind of fluctuates between like #1 and #5. So it's because, doctors rely on pills to solve people's problems, and people let them. So, those of you who are listening to the show, the ball's in your court now. Don't let your doctor solve your problem with some pills. Ask the right questions. That's why we're doing the show, so you know what questions that you can ask. Okay. Are nodules only caused by selenium deficiency? No. Again, nodules can be caused by lots of things. Iodine is one of the big causes. Selenium deficiency can also cause them, but not the only cause. Okay, what lab do you recommend for nutrient testing? Lymphocyte proliferation. So it's a specialized type of test that looks inside the lymphocyte to measure nutritional status based on the cellular functional outcome or growth of your lymphocytes. It's a very advanced type of technology. If you're doing serum lab testing, or you're doing something like oat testing, organic acid tests, it's not those can't be helpful. They're just not as, they're more extrapolative, and they're not as super objective, black and white. Yeah, I agree, June. We need regenerative agriculture for sure. Let's see. Is it advisable to supplement with iodine for Hashimoto sufferers with thyroid nodules, or is it? No, it's not. Again, I know I've answered this a number of times, and maybe I'm getting these questions, some of these questions, a little bit after I've already answered them, but it's not a contraindication. What's a contraindication is taking 50 milligrams of iodine without ever having measured your iodine levels in an accurate setting, and going it alone. Like that to me would be contraindicated. But getting iodine, you remember iodine's an essential nutrient, and hypothyroidism can be caused by iodine deficiency. So it's not contraindicated in autoimmune hypothyroidism. Organic black tea, yes, it does contain fluoride. It has nothing to do with whether the tea is organic, Wendy. It has more to do with the age of the leaf when the tea is picked. Tea is really good at pulling fluoride out of the soil. And so if you're wanting to drink tea and you like tea and you want to drink a lot of tea, you should look at a brand that picks the tea leaf early. Again, if you go over to visit us at Gluten Free Society, my foundation, there's a shop with food resources, and we've kind of hand selected some of the companies that and tea companies included for these reasons. Let's see, what are iodine cofactors? Refine your question, Chucho. It's kind of esoteric. Let's see, can one live with thyroid nodules forever, or should they go away? They should go away with the correct diet and lifestyle changes, Chris. A2 milk is milk produced by cows with A2 genetics as opposed to A1 genetics. And so the difference being that A1 milk, which is what most milk is in industrialized countries, A1 milk has been linked to and shown to increase the risk for the development of certain autoimmune problems. There's also some research that shows that BCM7, beta-caseomorphin 7, a type of protein found in A1 milk, can act like morphine and create addiction issues and create other problems. It's been linked to type 1 diabetes. So it's just not one that I would recommend that you drink. How should you test iodine in children? The same way you do in adults with an iodine loading test. Let's see. Can iodine drops stain your teeth if you dissolve it in water? They shouldn't stain your teeth. They might stain, if you've got like growth on your teeth, like, tartar buildup, they might stain the tartar itself, but it's not going to actually stain the teeth, or shouldn't. Let's see, Ann, I had one doctor who said my thyroid levels were too high, told me to up my meds, found a functional doc and said they were in the normal range, was a big shock, and yep, ticked off. Yep, you should have been. Yeah, because if you take too much thyroid medication, the problem with taking too much thyroid medication over time is that it puts more pressure on your heart. And so those of you who are on thyroid medication, if you're experiencing heart palpitations, hot flashes, trouble sleeping, muscle cramping, those are potential signs, agitation, irritability, those are potential signs that your medicine might be too high. I get people all the time where they're on the medication and their level, their TSH level is like 0.05, which is far lower then you can see this reference range, and that means they're being over medicated typically. And so it's an indicator that you want to have a conversation with your prescribing doctor about potentially lowering the medication to reduce your risk of developing a heart issue. Yeah, dogs are being prescribed levothyroxine nowadays. I mean, even the dogs, they're eating grain too. And that's one of the big problems with thyroid disease is grain is a major contributor to it. What causes a person to not convert T4 to T3? Lack of selenium. There's a series of enzymes called deiodinase enzymes, and those are selenium-driven enzymes. So to convert T4 to T3 requires a deiodinase enzyme that is selenium-driven. So lack of selenium is a big reason why that happens. Okay, I think we pushed way over time tonight, folks. So I've got more questions coming in. I don't think I'm going to be able to get to them all. But thanks for tuning in. As always, help me share the mission. If you enjoy the show, this is a show free of charge. We don't charge anything for it. It's just my brain on your plate every Monday night. But what I ask of you is to help me share the message. Our goal is to reach 100 million lives. We're trying to save 100 million lives. So do me a favor, hashtag save 100, 100, save 100 million lives in the comments section for me. Let's blow this thing up so we can reach more people with the mission and the greater goal, which is to get people off the drugs and back to living. So help me in my mission, save 100 million lives. come back and visit me next Monday. As always, we'll be here for Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, or come visit me at glutenfreesociety.org. If you're kind of new to all this and you don't know really where to get started, come subscribe to our newsletter over at glutenfreesociety.org. It's the world's largest #1 gluten-free informational newsletter that is science-packed and comes to you once a week. So sign up for that. And as also, if you haven't read No Grain, No Pain, I highly encourage you to go back and start looking at reading that. If you don't have a copy, you can go pick one up at Barnes & Noble or Amazon, or you can get one from your public library and read it for free. But whatever you do, just read it. Get educated. That's what I want to encourage you guys to do, is get educated. Knowledge is power. And once you have the knowledge, you can take action. And once you take action, you can change your life. And that's what it's all about. So we'll see you next week. This is Dr. Osborne wishing you excellent health. Hey, if you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutenology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.